When I was a kid, way down in the single digits, I used to join everything. And the reason was I was very shy, had trouble making friends, and if you're part of a group, you have the illusion of having friends. So I was in everything. And that's why when I got to 6th grade and they came around recruiting for the junior high school band, I signed up. And when they said we could use more trombones, I said, hey, I can do that. And trombone is really a cool instrument, but it has two drawbacks, especially for someone like myself. One is you should never give a slide trombone to a clumsy kid. That slide is very sensitive, and if you wrap it or bump into it, it sticks, and then you have to get it repaired, and my horn spent a lot of time in the shop. But the second and more serious issue was that the trombone, well, in this football season, we were a marching band. And then during the rest of the year, we were a concert band, you see? And the trombone, in both of those modalities, is largely a harmony instrument. Now, what that means is, well, the band will go da 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 bum bum da da bum bum da 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 bum 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 bum, like that. And that's fine when everyone's playing together. But when you're home alone practicing, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, bum, bum, 1, 2, bum, bum, 1, 2, 3, bum, 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 bum. And it's not so much music as noise. At least that's the way it seemed to me. And it never came out the same way twice. And I was never able to concentrate on something that I found to be boring. And it just didn't stick with me, and anyway, I wasn't very good. But the junior high school band was fine. We went to football games, we went out-of-town games on the bus, and we got to marching parades, and it was great except for that music part. So then I got to high school. In junior high, we had a very understanding, very nurturing sort of teacher. In high school, it was completely different. The guy there was a little martinet. He was a lieutenant in the National Guard, and he treated us like we were his own private army. He was a perfectionist. And he would yell, and he would scream at us. And his face would get red. And he'd bang the music stand with his baton, and sometimes so hard that the baton would fly out of his hand and pirouette over his head. But the worst part was that there were more than 50 people in the band. And he couldn't hear who had made what mistake. So he picked out about 4 different clipping boys in the group. And I was selected to represent the lower brass section, the trombones, baritones, and sousaphones. And if there was a mistake in that area, then he would call my name and he would give me help. Now, I have to admit, a lot of the mistakes were mine. I mean, you know how I was. But there were times I knew it wasn't me because I had lost my place and wasn't playing anything while I was trying to figure out. And after a few weeks, I learned just to try to play as softly as I could so maybe he wouldn't hear it. It didn't seem to make any difference. He must have learned to believe his own rhetoric because after a couple months of being in the band and we're doing all these things, one day after we did our regular practice, now we're going out on the field to practice marching. Instead of going to the practice field where we went every day, he had us all go to the varsity field. It was a large campus, it was about a block away. We all took this long walk, we got out there, and it wasn't really a stadium because it's high school, but it had the bleachers on either side and the manicured field itself and the stripes painted on there. And we were in Texas. I mean, walking into an empty field like that, it was like going to a church in midweek. I mean, this was a kind of a hallowed place. We got out there, went out in the middle of the field, got in formation, and we're standing there, and Mr. D comes out onto the field, and he called my name, and he said, I'm cutting you from the band. Go stand on the sidelines. Well, now, if he had done that any other way, and there are dozens of ways to do it, I would have probably said, okay, it's fine. But we were in this special place. He did it right in front of the rest of the band, almost ceremoniously. And I teared up. I was 15, I teared up. I never felt so miserable in my life. Slunk over to the sideline, stood on the side, everybody else practiced, and then we had that long walk back to the school. And the other kids, they saw what happened because, I was just a freshman. The kids who hardly ever spoke to me came over and offered sympathy and support and so forth as we walked back. And if this had been a movie, the next scene would be where the tables are turned and we get to come up and for the soccer. But in real life, things don't happen quite that way usually. And so what happened next is a couple months into the concert season, Mr. D gets up on this little box he stood on and said that he had really accomplished something great. He said, mark your calendars, and he gave us a date about 6 weeks down the road. He had gotten us a band workshop at the University of Houston, which was about 40 miles away, and it was going to be conducted by this world-famous musician that we've never heard of, but the rest of the world had. And we all had to be there. It was going to be all day Saturday. So, okay, it's a road trip. But then, midweek, I went to a scout meeting. I was still a member of the Boy Scouts. Remember, I joined everything. And they announced that our district council, our area council, had arranged for that same Saturday to be the date of a little jamboree where they're bringing all the troops together from the region, and they were all going to compete in various scoutcraft activities. And I have to tell you at this point that as bad as I was at band, that's how good I was at scouting. I knew the knot tying and the first aid, and the swimming and life saving, and Morse code and the wig-wag flag code, and the camping and the cooking over the camp. I was aces, and I'd been elected the patrol leader, and I had 8 other boys who looked to me for advice and guidance and stuff like that. So I knew where I would be of the most value. But my parents had always said school comes first. And what's even more important, I did not want to tell this man that I was not going to his band workshop. I mean, he was scary. And who knew what calamity would fall on my head if I said I'm not going. I could have told my parents, but then they would have done something parental, and it wasn't their problem. It's my problem, my decision, I had to do something. And of course, being a kid, I did nothing. I sat there waiting, hoping for some sort of miracle or something, and not telling anybody anything. And then about a week before that fateful Saturday, Mr. D gets up on his little box, and he said, next Saturday is the band workshop. And attendance is mandatory. I don't want anybody to come to me with any excuse. If you can't be there, just bring your uniform in on Monday morning and turn it in. And I said, oh, okay, I can do that. So I went on the camping thing, and no, really, I didn't. I went on the scouting thing, and we did fairly well in some of the competitions, not so well in some of the others. Part of the reason is that I made sure every boy had an equal chance to compete, regardless of skill levels. And then I came back. We were all feeling pretty good about ourselves. And on Monday morning, I remember standing in my room, looking in the closet at the purple uniform in the dry cleaner's bag, and thinking, if I take it in, I will have painted him into a corner. If I don't bring it, then he's got options. And you never really know with grown-ups. I mean, adults are a screwy bunch, and they don't always say what they mean. So I left it there. And I was within walking distance anyway. So I went to school. At third period, I had speech class, and getting out of that class, I usually took a shortcut through the band room to get back to the rest of the campus. And that day I thought, maybe I shouldn't do this. But I hardly ever saw Mr. D when I went that route. And why should I give up my routine if I haven't done anything wrong? So I went in, but now he had evidently taken note of my movements because he was waiting inside the door. And when I walked into the band room, he grabbed me, dragged me into an equipment room and slammed the door. And then, where were you on Saturday? And I told him I had this other responsibility, you know. And why didn't you tell me? Well, you told me not to tell you. Remember? I have never seen anyone so angry in my entire life. It seemed like it went on for about 15 or 20 minutes, but it was probably only about a tenth of that. But he yelled and screamed, and we were there just long enough for the paint to blister on the walls, you know, and the room to fill with smoke. And the odd thing was, as angry and out of control as he was, I was icy calm. This was totally unexpected. I stood there. I had a rational answer for every question he hit me with, and I was cool. And finally, he just opened the door and said, "Go." And I was just amazed at my own reaction to his diatribe. So I went to the rest of my classes. Sixth period came along. I didn't know what to do, so I went back to the band room. He was waiting at the door again, gave me a note and said, "Go to the principal's office." Now, since I was a freshman still, I had never had a face-to-face with the principal yet. And our principal was straight out of Central Casting. He was a tall, middle-aged man with broad shoulders and gray hair slicked straight back and jowls like a bulldog, and he sat behind his desk. And I gave him the note. He asked me what happened, and I told him. And he said, "Well, you had a decision to make and you made it." He said, "You're not going back to band. I can put you in a study hall for the rest of the year. Is that okay?" And I said, "Sure." So for the rest of the year, I got most of my homework done during the study hall. And then I didn't have that afternoon practice, so I got more free time. It was all golden. And I'd just like, if Mr. D were here tonight, you know, we get open seats, we got room for him. If he were here, I would just like to let him know that over the past few decades, looking back, I can say that I've met worse jackasses. But he was the first. And as a result of that, I learned not to be intimidated by authority, and that's served me well.